Hi, humans. This is the third in my series of case studies from old books that I'm doing just for the heck of it. So today I have two cases from Tan Yunxian, who was a Ming Dynasty doctor, but she was also a woman, which is pretty unusual. In the last case I did with Sunny Kui, there was a woman doctor. Actually, women doctors may not have been that unusual, but like writings from them or writings about them is pretty unusual. So I have two cases from her. Uh, so just a little background, you can see her dates. She lived 1461 to 1556. And when she was about 50 years old, she wrote a book that in English I'm calling Miscellaneous Records of a Female Doctor, Yu Yan, which was published in 1511. She, as far as we know, only treated women and girls. There's no record of her treating any males in her case study book or in any other place. But she wasn't a gynecologist specifically. She treated everything that women might have: digestive complaints, skin complaints, emotions, pain, and so forth, as well as gynecology, fertility, and postpartum. She treated whatever because, even today, women would prefer women doctors a lot of the time. And back then, even more so because there was such a divide between males and females and the ability to communicate and so forth. So she wrote in her book that, word of mouth got around, and pretty soon she was flooded with women and girls coming to see her. And she treated people of all economic positions. A number of her cases are of poor people, a number of her cases are of rich ladies, and so forth. So, it's an interesting book. There are 35 cases in it, and I translated it and it's been published. So, if you want to see more, you can buy it, but whatever. And in her treatment, she used herbal formulas and she used moxa quite a bit, but none of the cases used acupuncture. So that kind of implies that that wasn't a main thing for her. Maybe she didn't use acupuncture at all. She was taught by her grandparents. Her grandmother was also a doctor. Anyway, some of you may have read Lady Tan's Circle of Women, which is a recent book published, written by Lisa C. It's a novel and it's based on my translation of Tan Yunxian's book, in large part, but she embellished it quite a bit. I mean, it's fiction, so she had to fill in a lot of empty places, but she did also change a bunch of things. So it's a fun book to read. And then I have two cases here, and both of those cases Lisa C used in her book. So now you can see what the original case was. The first one we're going to talk about, she pretty much used it straightforward the way Tan Yunxian wrote it. And the second case, she changed quite a bit, but I'm not complaining. Fiction is fiction. So anyway, on the left is actual, photo of some pages in Tan's original book. Well, actually, the second printing of her book. So anyway, then she had like 31 cases, and this is the second case that she had in her book. A 40-year-old woman was piloting a passenger boat, driving the boat, whatever the proper word is. And this woman suffered 6 years of numbness in both hands. It never got better. So Dr. Tan, I asked about the source of the disease, and she said that she had to steer the boat every single day, whether it was spring or autumn, day or night, whether it was windy or rainy, cloudy or sunny. So she's exposed to all kinds of weather chi. And she's 40, so she's not young. I mean, 40 is not necessarily that old, but she's not young, and she's been doing this for so many years. So as she ages, and she's probably not wealthy, so maybe sometimes she isn't able to take good care of herself or get enough to eat, and continually exposed to weather. Eventually she got a B pattern, and now she's got numbness in her arms, or both hands or arms. And so she took medicine ever since this started happening, but it never did much. And so Dr. Tan, I said, oh, this must be a wind damp B condition. And so I treated her with Moxa on 8 points, and she recovered. So this looks like 4 points, but in the old books, when they talk about a point, if it's bilateral, they count it as two. And so that means she did all these points bilaterally. She did LI 15, LI 11, 2 points on the Yang Ming channels, which have abundant qi in blood and really are good at regulating the flow of qi in blood. Okay, and she also did Sanjiao 6, which is a little bit surprising. I might have picked Sanjiao 5 related to weather, Waiguan, but she picked Sanjiao 6 to get the Xiaoyang channels in the act. Lung 7, Yechui, which is, the low point. And, it treats exterior attack. The lungs govern the skin and pores and body hair, which all the evils are invading through. So she picked points on both arms and did a whole bunch of moxa on them. Back then, moxa sticks had been invented, but were not common at her time. So it's very likely she was doing maybe direct grain of rice moxa on these points. Maybe she was doing larger cones of moxa. Maybe she was doing indirect moxa with ginger, for example. She doesn't really explain her moxa technique, so we don't know. But she did a bunch of moxa on the arms, and the patient got better. Also, though, Tan prescribed her a formula, which here is called Chu Shi Zhang Zhu Tang, which is eliminate dampness decoction that has Zhangzhu as one of its main ingredients, from a certain book. But unfortunately, she didn't lay out the whole formula. She assumed that the reader would have this book and would be able to look up this formula. Well, this book doesn't exist anymore. There are no extant copies, which means it's called a lost book. It means there are no copies that exist today. And so I did some research into this, formula, and there actually, it probably should be called Sangju Chushi Tang. Like, these two phrases should be flipped. But this is eliminate damp, and we know Zhangzhu is going to be the main herb. I, tried to find a formula that would fit, but they're either too many or none of them are just right. So I don't know exactly what formula this is, but we get the idea. She's using anti-damp herbs, including Sangju. And so here's some notes on it. She had wind damp B due to all this exposure, and moxa is really good at warming and moving and drying dampness. And since it moves qi, it can also stop pain. It can also get flow going again, and so it can treat the numbness. And she didn't just look for the Asher point and then do moxa on the worst sites. She selected points of the Yangming and the Xiaoyang channels, and selected points that can help with exterior evils. And as I said, the formula comes from a book that we don't have anymore, and it was really hard to figure out. I don't know exactly which formula she used. Okay, so that's the first case, and that was definitely in Lady Tan's circle of women. Yeah, so that's good. Okay. One of the reasons why I like this case study book is because you get glimpses into the lives of women during the Ming Dynasty. And not only the wealthy women, but here's a working woman. You know, so we get to kind of get a little slice of her life and see what she had to put up with. Okay. The second case, this one in Lady Tan's Circle of Women, it was changed quite a bit, but you can still recognize that it came from this case. This is case number 13 in miscellaneous records of a female doctor. So, a 52-year-old woman had upset stomach with vomiting. She drank liquor every day, not even a lot. It says a few cups of liquor every day. And this is implying that she's not eating, she's only drinking. She only drank liquor every day. She vomited if she even saw a grain of rice, like food made her feel really sick. She was this way for a year. And so, of course, she became so skinny. She became emaciated. Her body looked like a corpse. And so, Tan then uses moxa on this woman on 5 points. And again, we've got 3 points on the midline and 1 point that's bilateral. So that makes 5 sites, even though we might call it 4 points. So we can see the 3 1 points, Shangwan, Zhongwan, and Shawan, Ren 13, 12, and 10, which are like the upper opening of the stomach, the center of the stomach, and the lower opening of the stomach. And, these 3 points are used a lot for digestive disorders. Ren 10 can focus on food stagnation because it opens the lower opening of the stomach to let the food pass through. Ren 13 is often used for counterflow because it's at the upper opening of the stomach, so it prevents stomach chi from counterflowing upward. And Ren 12 is kind of generic for any stomach disorders, the mu point of the stomach, spleen also. And then there's this non-channel point called Shiguan, which we'll see on the next page. So various books locate Shiguan as 1.5 lateral to Ren 12 or 1.5 lateral to Ren 11. It's said to treat digestive disorders, for example, choking on food and being unable to swallow food, stomach acid reflux, stomach reflux, non-transformation of food, which means undigested food in the stool. And so this is a point that's been around since 1388 or sooner than that, but that's the first reference that we have to it. Her condition in Chinese is called fan wei, which can mean some different things, but based on her symptoms, I translate it as upset stomach. Which this condition, fan wei, can include distension of fullness after she eats, vomiting a long time after eating, not instantly after eating, but a long time after eating, undigested food in the vomit, and symptoms of deficiency coldness or yang deficiency. Okay, so that's the background on the previous slide. So Tan says, when I initially used moxa, the moxa cone flared up and then went out. This was really weird. This was different than moxa when I do it on other people. The next visit, then I quickly put mugwort cones on her, and again they flared up and went out. When you light moxa, it kind of just glows and burns down at a steady pace. But here I get the image of like flames coming up out of it. And then it burns itself out really quickly. The third time, doesn't say if that happened again, but the third time she returned home after getting a moxa treatment, and she ate a bowl of shrimp soup. So remember, she was only drinking alcohol. She wasn't able to eat. Shrimp soup, though, sounds a little hard on somebody who's been having digestive issues, but that's what she did. And she also ate a cup of fresh fish porridge, rice porridge with fish, and she didn't even vomit. So, wow, she like ate a lot. And then, even though it's all liquidy soup and porridge and stuff like that, but she ate a lot and didn't vomit this time. So, that's something new after 3 moxa treatments. So, a little bit more background. um, there's something I found when I was researching, when I translated her cases, I did a lot of research to explain things in the cases. And she frequently mentioned Zhu Danqi, who is one of the 4 great masters of the Jin Yuan dynasty. And she, frequently selected herbal formulas from his books. So I spent a lot of time researching in his books because I knew that she would also be selecting things from his books because she really seemed to like him. He came from a nearby, like he was a couple 100 years before her, but lived in the same region. So he probably had a lot of local fame in addition to the national fame. Anyway, so in one of his books, he's talking about treating phlegm disorders. And, one of the things they did in ancient times more often than we do today is making people vomit, including if they have a lot of phlegm, to get the phlegm out very quickly. And so after discussing various herbal strategies for treating phlegm, Zhu Danqi says, the shrimp broth vomiting method is also good. But he doesn't explain exactly what is this method. So I just kind of wonder if that shrimp soup that she ate has something to do with this. Maybe she expected that we would be familiar with the shrimp broth vomiting method, or maybe it was just coincidental and that's what she ate. So anyway, so could that, so okay, she ate it and didn't vomit, but on the next slide, she's going to start vomiting again. And so that's why I wonder if this has something to do with that. I can't answer the question, but that's a question. Okay, so back to her case. The next day during the second watch, which was around 9 to 11 p.m. So, they had night watchmen and there were 5 watches. So either maybe 5 different people each did a watch, or maybe they circled an area 5 times during the night. But it was a way of timekeeping at night. They'd often have like a bell, or they'd call out and say, okay, it's the second watch. Okay, it's the third watch. So each of these watches is a 2-hour period, but there seems to be some variation about exactly what was when. Anyway, so this is, not too late at night. The next day during the second watch, she had an especially severe episode of vomiting. And then, it's already dark by then, right? 9 p.m., 11 p.m. We don't know what time of year it is, but it's going to be dark by then. And so after she vomited, in the bowl where she vomited, something could be seen rippling the water. Like, ooh, there's something moving in there. Oh my goodness, what is it? So at dawn, they looked at it and it was a flatworm, but this doesn't seem to be the normal. Where's flatworm go? Sorry, here it is. Flatworm. This isn't like, I think there is a insect, a chong, a parasite that's called flatworm. This isn't, I don't think, the normal way of saying that. So this is some kind of worm that's flat. Anyway, so it was in the basin, 5 zun long and 1 zun wide, like 5 inches long and 1 inch wide. Wow, weird. Remember, this is in Lisa C's book, but in a little bit of a different form. Okay, so after she got rid of this big old flatworm, then she took a batch of some other formula stomach harmonizing Baiju pills, and her food intake gradually increased. Her appearance returned to normal, and she then recovered and regained her health. And you get the impression that she's not drinking anymore. You know, she's eating now and not drinking. So let's see what I have to say. So here's the formula, the best I can, I mean, sometimes there are multiple formulas that have the same name, but this seems to be the formula. This is a formula from Di Dongyuan, another, the four great masters of the Jin Yuan dynasty, and she also used his stuff. So this is probably the formula. I'm not going to talk about it, but if you're interested, you can always pause the video and read this in more detail. So because she had been vomiting for a long time, she was so weak that Tan didn't think about giving her herbs at first, because if you're just emaciated and you vomit everything that goes in, and so your, stomach chi is like so weak, then how can you give them herbs to drink? So Tan started with moxa, and then the moxa acted really weird, which kind of she's implying it had something to do with this worm. Worms were often seen as having supernatural powers. Maybe you've heard of goo, this kind of like black magic, bug, poison stuff. She didn't think this was goo. She's not saying this was goo, but that's just the idea that chong, which are like all creepy crawlies, including worms and parasites and bugs and snakes and toads and all that kind of stuff, were sometimes seen as having like supernatural bad powers. So the weird event is kind of associated with that somehow. Anyway, and then all of the moxa points were over the abdomen, which is where we think that worm was, because it came up with vomiting. So maybe it overheated the worm and the worm decided to leave. And the patient recovered. So a question though that I had is, was she simply an alcoholic who had a parasite? Or was her alcohol intake due to the parasite? Was it the alcohol who wanted, was it the parasite who wanted to drink the alcohol, not necessarily her? So I'll point out that in ancient China, people didn't drink plain water because that's a good way to get dysentery. Maybe they drank boiled water, but more often they'd drink tea or some kind of soup, or something, or like wine, rice wine, things like that. So she wasn't going to be drinking plain water, but was she drinking rice wine or baijiu, hard liquor? Was she drinking it because she was alcoholic, or was she drinking it because the parasite? We do know that parasites sometimes make people crave special foods. So perhaps it was an alcoholic worm. I did look on the internet, and there's not a lot. It was indeterminate. There's not a lot whether alcohol and parasites have an association, but there was one case that came up pretty high in the search, that was like a modern case, where somebody who was drinking a lot, it made a parasite that she had, kind of become a critical condition. It did affect the parasite. So I don't know. But the fact that she recovered later kind of to me says that it might have been the worm that wanted the alcohol, because they didn't mention her relapsing back into alcoholism. Now she's able to eat. So that's, sometimes the cases leave you with questions. So that's that case. In any case, I'm not going to always bother you trying to sell my book or my books or anything like that. But since we're talking about Tan Yunxian, just so you know that this book has been translated by me with Dr. Liu, with Yue Wu, who's like another teacher at Alhambra Medical University, and she's quite wonderful. And so I did most of the translation, but like she helped me so much researching certain things that like were hard for me to figure out. Um, so this book is available from Chinese Medicine Database, which here's the email address, I mean the web page, or through Amazon. And so if this interests you, well, you sure get it. If not, that's fine. I might do some more cases of hers at another time. Okay, so that's my case for this time for today. I'm going to see you next time.